Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert with the Ted Show. Extremely excited to be here with Joey Stuckey. Joey Stuckey came up with this title, and you're going to learn more about him, but a blind musician with an insightful vision. First of all, I love any musician, and I love a musician with a story because any kind of artist has some kind of story, Joey. They've got something in there, something going on that helps motivate them, inspire them to be the artist that they are. So, enough about me. Welcome to the show, and tell us about you, Joey.
Absolutely. I appreciate you being here, and I'm excited to be here as well. Basically, my entrance into music happened when I was about 13. I'd had a brain tumor when I was about 2, and they weren't. They told my parents that I probably wouldn't make it, and
Wow.
they said, if he does make it, he probably won't walk or talk. I can do both those things. And this is back in the mid 70s. So it was a dark age of medicine compared to what we have now. And of course, they told my parents to prepare that it was going to be an 8 or 9 hour surgery. And if they came out in less time, just to be prepared that things didn't go well. So they came out in about 3 hours, and the doctor said that he just felt like a higher power took hold of his hands and he lifted the tumor out. And that's an amazing.
No way, that had chills.
And that's an amazing thing. The brain tumor, the most obvious thing, if you just look at me or just talk to me or whatever, the most obvious thing the brain tumor did was leave me blind. It also left me without a sense of smell. However, I believe in using everything you have to your advantage. So I tricked my wife into marriage by telling her that she would always look good and smell good no matter what happened. And she took it. She's like, I will take that deal. And we've been married 17 years as of June. So it worked out pretty well.
That's amazing.
But the brain tumor wrecked my endocrine system. So I don't have, for example, adrenal function. I don't have thyroid. So that whole system is gone. So not only do I have the challenge of, being blind, but I also have a challenge of, not making adrenaline. And so I take a ton of pills and shots and all kind of stuff like that every day. But they're not therapeutic. In other words, I'm not treating an illness. I'm just replacing things my body doesn't make. And so I have to be careful of that. So, if I want to be at work at, let's just say 9 o'clock in the morning, that means I need to get up about 6 so that I have time to get my medicine in me and feel good. And then once I'm up and running, the tricky part's just getting up and running. But once I'm up and running, I'm pretty much set. So, but I had a lot of childhood illnesses, and I really didn't think about being a musician as a living, or even a hobby as a child, because I was focused on survival.
Where did the music come in? I mean, let me go back to the survival part because I will get to the music. But that must be, tell us about the journey there, because it's one thing to be a child, there's all sorts of things going on in your world as it is as a quote unquote normal type child.
Yeah.
You have all of these other things to deal with. What was that process like? Did you have a great support system? Tell us a little bit about the challenge.
Yeah, my parents are brilliant. They're both still living, and they managed to make sure that I was able to focus on the affirmational part of it rather than the fear part. So, like, for example, the day I had my brain tumor taken out was September 29th. Well, instead of saying, this is the day we almost lost our son, this is the day you almost died, they said, no, this is the day you survived. Yeah. And so we celebrate that day every year, still do, quietly, but just celebrate the fact of surviving against the odds. And they always kept me focused on things like that. One of the reasons I'm in the music business, music was always a huge part of our home. My mom was the daughter of a Baptist preacher, so she sang a lot in the choir. My dad played country music as a hobby and always, had for years. So music was always a big part of our home, always a source of solace, always a source of comfort, always a source of joy. And it was very eclectic. I listened to everything from Mozart to the Beatles and everything in between, Hank Williams, Senior, and and then Ave Maria. So it's like it was very eclectic, and this is really true. My parents were really good about explaining things to me and helping me understand the world and helping me fit in with my sighted counterparts. They didn't want me to be in a different universe or a different culture because I was blind. So I never went to a blind school or anything like that. Not that those aren't helpful or useful, but I never did it. I just sort of toughed it out in a normal school. But they did remarkable things and were very, very creative about describing the universe to me in ways that made sense. But one of the things that's really true and is just an oversight on their part was they showed me how to turn the radio on and off. But they never taught me there was a knob to change the channel. And so one day I was about 8 years old. I got to school and I heard this music and I was like, what is that? And this kid's like, it's rock and roll, man. And I was like, whoa. And I had no idea the channel would change to the rock and roll station. And that's when I turned my powers to evil and started listening to rock and roll. But no, there were a lot of challenges health-wise. A lot of fights, a lot of illnesses. And, I'm not going to say it doesn't get old to be sick all the time. It totally does. But whenever I was healthy enough to do something, we did it, traveled the world with my parents. They felt like that life and exploration of the universe around you was just as important as going to school and doing the textbooks and all that kind of stuff. So,
I love the fact that the situation obviously was challenging for everyone involved, and they put this positive on it. They came from a place of gratitude, not fear.
And it's not like it's not like we did not acknowledge that there was a difference, because we did. To say, oh, nothing's changed because you're blind is crazy. Right. So I like to exemplify that with a story that I like to tell. And it's my dad. Was one of the few people I know that actually used his college degree. What I mean by that is he actually did things in the realm that he got his college degree in, and so he had a degree in political science, and he was very involved in politics. So he was friends with Democrats, Republicans, Independents, anyone of a good heart, he would be friends with. So we knew everybody from Ronald Reagan, and my dad was really big in the Carter administration back in the day, and so. One day, he had been telling me about, since I was a little child, he'd been telling me about Max Cleland, who's a senator from our state and of Georgia. And Max is a Vietnam vet who lost both legs below the knee and one arm below the elbow. And so my dad, as was amazed by all the things that Max had accomplished, being a United States senator, being Secretary of State, doing all these things. And I'd heard about Max Cleland since I was little. And of course, my dad, being a properly proud father of his son, had told, oh, my son's doing this, my son's doing that, and talked about me to Max. And one day we got a chance to meet when I was in my mid-20s. And what I do is when I walk up to someone, I say, hey, I'm Joey Stuckey, nice to meet you. And I stick my hand out, and then people, without even thinking, just take my hand and shake it. So it's not awkward. I initiate the contact so that I'm not fumbling to try and find somebody's hand. Sure. But the problem was, my dad hadn't told me any of Max's story, like, hey, Max is in a wheelchair. Hey, Max didn't have, legs below the knee. So I'm standing and I stick my hand out and say, hey, it's nice to meet you. Meanwhile, Max is sitting in his wheelchair. So my dad's like, oops. So my dad very carefully guides my hand down to shake Max's hand, but guides it to the arm that is gone below the elbow. Oh. And so I'm sitting there going, What is happening? What is happening? What am I holding? I don't understand. And Max said, hey, you got a little vision problem? I'm like, yes, I do. And so the point of the story, it's kind of silly, but the point is this, we realize our limitations, but we don't define ourselves in terms of them. And so Dad didn't say, hey, listen to all the things my blind son has done, or listen to all these things my disabled friend Max Cleland has done. He just had two people he was inspired by and proud of, and shared, information about them. But it never occurred to think of Max as the guy in the wheelchair or his son that was blind. So that's the kind of environment I was raised in, where again, you acknowledge that you have to do things differently, because to not do so would be crazy, but you also don't define yourself in terms of your limitation. So that is like the big story.
It seems like that particular approach would solve so many of our world problems.
It would.
I absolutely love that, because but the moment that you two had, what a pure moment. Neither of you had any preconceived notions
None.
about the other person's physical challenges.
That's
and right. It was so pure on your dad's part.
Yeah, it was just love.
Love that story. It's all love.
It's
So
all love.
when did you fall in love with music? When did you decide, all right, I think I can do this? I actually have.
It was a weird journey, because I got really sick with pneumonia and had to stay in the house 3-4 months, just totally sick with pneumonia when I was 13. And they eventually did give me some medicine that cleared the pneumonia, but it made me start throwing up blood. I won't go too far down that rabbit hole. But it was not a good situation. But I discovered public radio. And on public radio from midnight to 3 a.m. every Saturday night, the DJ there, and this is back when I lived in Jacksonville, Florida, and the DJ there was named Rob Thomas. And he played old radio shows from like the 50s and 60s. So he played the Lone Ranger, The Shadow, War of the Worlds, all these old time radio shows. And I was amazed at this new form of media, because while I watch TV, quote unquote, obviously I'm not seeing it because I am totally blind, but I listen to TV and I can follow along with about 80% of what's going on just by dialogue and music. And the love scenes and the car chases are kind of boring, but otherwise it's fine. And if I have a question, I very quietly lean over to someone and go, "Hey, what just happened?" And but this was radio drama designed back in the age before there was television. And so it was the story completely told by music, sound effects, dialogue. And I was like, I can do this. I can create these sounds for film and TV. And I thought, who better than a blind person to make a realistic sound? So I started playing with recording equipment when I was 13 years old. And wow. I used the scientific method. I just plugged it in and said, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And my parents, indulged this thing. So by the time I was 15, I'd moved to Macon, Georgia. And the same, and the DJ that I had known playing these radio shows, I've never been shy, never been a stranger. I called him up and I said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. It's changed my life." And he actually came over and visited with me and taught me what he knew. And then when I moved to Macon and left Jacksonville, Florida, when I was about 15, he had a friend who was running the local planetarium here in Macon. And that guy was complaining. He's like, I can't get the sound right in the planetarium, and it just doesn't sound. And Rob said, "Hey, I know this kid that's pretty sharp. You should get him to come be your sound tech." So I got my first job as a planetarium sound tech at 15. And then what happened was all the people, like young people they were older than me, 18 to their early 20s, but a lot of them worked there or volunteered there. They all said, "Hey, I understand you have some recording equipment. Will you record my garage band?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." So once I heard one of those bands play an original song, and I was so moved by it that it was something they'd written. They weren't just playing other people's music, but they were playing their own music. Then I knew that I had a story to tell and that music was the vehicle for that story. And I was like, I can do this. So I can record music. I can produce it. I can write it. I can play it. So by the time I was, 17, 18 years old, I was writing my own songs. By the time I was 19, I had my own studio in a building downtown. I moved out of my attic, and I have been making a living in music ever since. I teach it. I perform and tour. I record other people and work. Most of my living is working as a full-time producer to help other artists. But it's the reason I do music is it is a natural extension of my spirit. It's what I do, and I do it because if I don't, I'm not complete. It's just it's the same thing as food or air or water for me.
It feeds you.
It does. And the biggest thrill and the biggest honor is when I'm able to feed somebody else the same thing. So when I'm able to share something that makes somebody's day, even if it's just for a moment, that to me is priceless. So it's a hard business, but I tell my students, if you love it so much it hurts not to do it, this is the job for you. If not, you might want to think of something else.
Do you have students that come in? One of my favorite parts, it's sad, but the American Idol auditions, when people have come in and they've told these poor human beings for their entire life that they're have an amazing voice and they're the next new discovery, and they are tone deaf. Do you have students that come in and I don't even know, is that trainable or is that just dude, you need to find another passion?
I think, well, so here's the interesting thing. I'm going to give you a philosophical answer to that question. So the interesting thing is there are people who literally have a physical limit to their ability. So my dad, for example, is deaf. He has to wear hearing aids. Without them, he can hardly hear anything. And he loves to sing. It is god awful. It is howling dogs, cat in a blender. It's just, but here's the deal. It makes him so happy.
Yeah.
And now he knows it's bad. So he is under no illusion. He had like family and friends have literally paid him to stop singing when he was a child. It's really true. And so he knows it's bad, but he loves it so much that he does it not as a career choice, but he does it because it makes him happy. Sure. So I think everyone should be able to experience that. If it makes you happy, and even if it's terrible, who cares? You're having fun. That's fine. Now, if you're choosing to make it a career, that is a bit of a different bar. And you got to be able to, you got to be able to make a living. It would be irrational for me to think, I'm Joey Stuckey, I'm going to be a NASCAR driver, even though it's an oval. How hard can it be? It would be, I just am not equipped to do it. I'm just, I can't, there are just certain things I can't do. You don't want a blind man to come paint your house. It might be a conversation piece, but it's not going to be pretty. It's just not. So, so I think when it comes to like kids, I say kids, but it comes to people that are young and are starting out their life. They have their whole life ahead of them. They're starting out. I think the best thing to do is never lie, but never crush their dreams. And if you give them a good education and you give them all the tools that you're able to give, at some point, they will, most of them, not all of them, but most of them will come to understand that it's not for them. So but I'm not harsh. I'm never like, you suck. I don't do that. But I never would lie. And I would say, well, my method is this. Here are the things that I'm happy about with your performance. Here are the things we need to work on.
Oh, I like that.
And then, at some point, most people will realize they can't do it. There are still many people that are self-deluded that, come into my studio all the time that really shouldn't be spending the money. And, but got to eat. It's not my job to say, hey, this is terrible. It's my job to make them the best they can be. I am not a big proponent of things like auto-tune and things like that, trying to make people sound like they can sing when they can't. I don't really believe in that philosophy. I don't really like that method of recording in general. If you've got one or two notes that need just a little correction, and the choice is bring the artist off the road and cost them thousands and thousands of dollars to fix two little notes, or to do it by the computer, fix it. Fix it with the computer and move on down the road.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'll share, the inside of trying to have guests on the show. I had to reach out to Joey because a couple of the guests prior to him that are musical artists said that they didn't want to sing live.
Yeah.
And so that made me shift to saying people want to hear live. They might love your story, but they're here for the music, and then they're going to listen to the story, or
absolutely
they have to go hand in hand. So it's fascinating to me about the auto-tune part, because the first thing I thought of, okay, why wouldn't you want to perform live? Why would you not want to continue to let people see you have talent? And I have a feeling, not for these two, because I don't believe that they're auto-tune people, but I think that people get so afraid to perform live. I get it. I'm not understanding it, but it was prevalent. So you're the first person that I said, everybody before them had sang live.
Yeah.
And you're the first person I said, listen, in order for you to come on, I really need you to sing.
And it makes sense to me. You're right. Why would you not want to share your gift?
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And two in a row. And I said to them, I said, you guys have such a great sound. Yeah. Well, we're in different, like one of them, they're so good. And I told them afterwards, they said they're going to come back on and sing. I think people are afraid of this platform. Sometimes they're afraid of the unknown. And so they're like, shoot, there's nothing here but me and the music. Yeah. What is happening? And so it's a fearful kind of thing. So I have to ask you, tell me where you get the inspiration for your songs. Are you, the song that you're going to perform today, did you write it? Where did it come from? Tell us a little bit about your musical process.
So I have, I can play 1 or 2 songs today. It's totally your call. I'm totally flexible. The 2 that I decided on was, I am the official music ambassador for my hometown of Macon, Georgia. So I do a lot of talking. Little Richard's from here. Otis Redding is from here. The Allman Brothers and a lot of the great Southern rock bands spent a lot of time here and eventually moved here. So we were the Southern rock mecca kind of in the 70s. And we've had a lot of really interesting musical history all the way back to Sidney Lanier, who was a great poet and musician, back in the way back days. And like Jason Aldean, who's a country music star right now, he's from here. So there's something in the water up here. I'm not sure. There's just something in this town. There's a lot of fantastic music. And so one of the songs I'm going to perform today is Georgia on My Mind, because it's a classic. And it was really made famous by another blind guy, Ray Charles. So gotta pay a little homage to him. So that's one thing. But I also have a song called Truth is a Misty Mountain that I was going to play for you if there was time. Fantastic. And that's a song about realizing that you're in a very one-sided relationship and it's not going to work out. It's just, and the reason it's called Truth is a Misty Mountain, it's like, it's the idea that sometimes truth is shrouded in mist. It's hard to reach. It's hard to penetrate the truth because you have so many conflicting ideas and emotions and thoughts. You remember the good times and you remember the bad times. And you sometimes have difficulty figuring out, am I really meant to be with this person? Because the good times are really high, but the bad times are really low. Is there a balance here? And then you have to kind of think about it. And really, I feel like life has a way of trying to trick us into thinking it's more complicated than it is. Because at the end of the day, I think the question becomes really simple. And the question is, are you happy or not? And if you're not, then there's 2 ways to fix that. You can have an honest discussion and say, hey, other person, here are the things I need to be happy. And I'm not asking you to change because that's foolish. What I'm telling you is here's what I need. And let's figure out if we're actually compatible. When my wife and I decided to get married, we had a really long, serious talk before I proposed, just saying, what do you think marriage is? What do you think it means? If she likes Sex and the City and I like Star Trek, we can get past that. But if she's not, that's not a big deal. But if she's not a spiritual person and I am, that's going to be a problem. So to quote Chris Rock, I'll do it the clean way. But, he basically said, if you're religious, your partner's got to be religious or it's not going to work out. Because 2 people that are different aren't going to make it, whereas 2 crackheads will stay together forever. So, you got to have
Chris Rock.
Oh, me too. He's a genius.
All right, and, so yes, we have time for both if you have time. So, let them hear you.
All right, I'll do it. I'm going to take these headphones off just for a second, so I don't get caught up in the cord.
I'm still here.
Hang on 1 second.
All right.
And then as soon as I'm done performing, I will put them back on.
Fantastic.
Let me get my hair back into place. Is that all right, honey? Yeah. All right, this is Georgia on My Mind. Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through. Just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. I'm talking about Georgia, yeah, Georgia. The sound of you, whoa, 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 come as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pine. Yeah, yeah, now other arms reach out to me, and other eyes smile tenderly, and still in peaceful dreams I see the road leads back to you. Georgia, Georgia, the peace I find. Just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Yeah, yeah, now other arms reach out to me, and other eyes smile tenderly. Still in peaceful dreams I see the road leads back to you. Georgia, Georgia, no peace I find. Just an old sweet song is Georgia on my mind. Just an old sweet song is Georgia on my mind. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Woo! I loved it. I kept like.
I climbed the mountain in search of the sun, yeah. Summit I reached, finding nothing except rain. Falling into despair, dark as midnight's touch, singing, I ain't call your name in someone else's voice. I'm falling down now, yeah. What's gonna do when our country mountains crumble so well, you? My soul is dead, thanks to demons in your pretty head. I left my Eden battered and beaten, black and blue, blue as sky, the color of your lying eyes. I'm falling down now, yeah. What you gonna do in our country? Mountains crumble, so will you. My soul is dead, thanks to demons in your pretty head. Oh, ooh. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. And that's the end of that one. All right, putting the headphones back on so I can hear you. All right, I can hear you again.
Absolutely awesome. Lots of goosebumps. People made comments.
Oh, fantastic. I really appreciate that.
I have to say, I was not expecting the second song. In my brain, because I don't do a lot of research, right? I didn't.
That's the way to do it, my friend.
I thought maybe, we did Georgia on My Mind, and I didn't know what to expect. I loved it. It was very, it was more upbeat.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved that. And what was the name of that song so people know?
That one's called Truth is a Misty Mountain. And, it's been a fan favorite. I mean, I've been playing it live for a million years. And we finally, I kept saying to myself, why have I not recorded this song? What is wrong with me? And finally, we were on tour in 2018, and we were in Memphis, Tennessee. And I said, listen, we got a day off. I don't like those. So let's go work. And I told the band, I said, let's go in to Sun Studio, which is the place where Elvis and Roy Orbison, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis did all these great records in the 50s and 60s. And let's just go record, our sound, like how we sound right now. And so we went in, and, you can only book 3 hours at a time there because it's mostly a museum. And they were using all the same equipment from, the 60s. And I stood on the same little X marks the spot, little tape mark on the floor where Elvis, stood and sang.
It's amazing.
And it was a blast. And we just recorded, just for fun, we recorded our set. And so we did this whole, I don't know, it was 10, 12 songs in 3 hours. And that includes setup time and everything. And so then I brought it home, and I thought it was kind of just going to be a souvenir. And I was like, this is pretty good. And we should make a record out of this thing. So I realized now that it was the universe did its thing. I recorded it when I was supposed to record it. It turned out the way I wanted it. It's a little bit longer because there's a guitar solo in there, which I omitted. But it really turned out well. And it's on an album called In the Shadow of the Sun. My studio is called Shadow Sound Studio. And the Sun Studio, of course, is Sun Studio. So it's sort of an homage to those two things. So that's In the Shadow of the Sun. And I think it's got some of my best work on there.
Beautiful. All right. How do people reach you, Joey? How can they listen to your music? How can they purchase your music if they want? How can they best reach out to the one and only Joey Stuckey?
The best way is to go to joeystuckey.com, JoeyStuckey.com. There's a little place in there called the Fan Zone. And the Fan Zone has a lot of ways for you to sign up for my email list, track where we're performing, which is not many places right now because of COVID. Also, you can get some free music. So there's some free music on there for you. And that's a really cool place to experience things. I am on all the platforms where you expect independent music: iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. But again, my website has all the information you want. But do reach out, because I'm always glad to get emails from folks. I'm always glad to speak at different events. And I love talking to people on social media. So just reach. I've got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff.
Fantastic. Man, you're a joy. What an inspiration. Thank you so much for what you're giving back, giving to the world. I love it. And I want people to reach out. Guys, we have Joey's website is scrolling across the bottom there, joeystuckey.com. Guys, reach out to him. That was beautiful. Thank you to you and your beautiful wife for taking time out. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Ted. I appreciate it, brother. I'll be in touch.
All right, brother. Thank you guys so much. Reach out to the one and only Joey Stuckey. See you guys later.